I don't know about you, but I don't think I should be starting with this if I want to get familiar with what I'm about to get into.
There is no denying that Cats is one of the most iconic stage musicals ever made. In fact, some can even go as far and state that it was a massive game changer for musicals and was a key player in making Broadway popular in the mainstream all over again. Based on the series of poems Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats by T.S. Eliot, one guy who was a fan of the book since he was a kid was Andrew Lloyd Webber, and one day decided to write some songs based on the poems that would eventually become his most well-known musical next to The Phantom of the Opera. Ever since its debut in 1981, it had tens of thousands of performances all around the world, received numerous of awards, and one of the songs, Memory, went on to have an entire life of its own as one of the most recognizable songs from a stage musical.
That's just a very brief summary of Cats. Believe me when I say that it would take an entire video in itself for me to go and fully discuss about the making of the musical and its cultural impact. However, one thing that I have yet to say is the fact that while it is a very popular musical, it is also a very polarizing musical. There are some people that would either really love this, or they would really hate this. Which side am I on? Well, to be very honest, I honestly don't know, because I have actually never seen Cats. Yeah, very surprising considering the fact that as a musical guy, I have never seen one of the most well-known musicals in existence. But in all seriousness though, it is going to be time that we are going to go and change that. However, there isn't really any stage productions happening anywhere near me, so the only thing I could do now is just watch the next best thing. The direct-to-video movie.
Yes, between 1998 and 2000, a trio of Webber's musicals were turned into direct-to-video films that would completely recreate the stage show and package it all to be released in home media and air it directly on television. There was Jesus Christ Superstar, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, which I am very familiar with, and the first one of the group, Cats, featuring a mixed cast of those that were still performing in the stage shows at the time and the originals from West End and Broadway, including Susan Jane Tanner, Elaine Page, and...
Well, what have we here?
Oh yeah, the one I recognize the most among these cool cats, Ken Page.
Sure, it's definitely not like watching it live on stage, but hey, for the sake of the review, gotta work with the materials that I have in front of me right now, am I right? But with all that said, now that I have finally seen this, how is my first taste of this musical? What do I now think about Cats? Well, I'd be more than happy to tell ya. That is, if anything was happening in the first place.
As this is my introduction to the musical, what I was hoping for is that this would tell me what Cats is all about. Like, what is the story of Cats? Apparently, all the cats of the Jellicle tribe gather once a year for something called the Jellicle Ball, where the leader of the group, Old Deuteronomy, makes the Jellicle choice to select one cat that will go to the Heaviside Lair and be reborn into a new Jellicle life. Okay, but it just sounds like the base concept though. What about the journey to selecting this cat? Who are the central characters we follow, and what are the obstacles they have to face that lead to the ultimate selection? The answer? There isn't any. In fact, that's the problem with this show. There's no story. This is just a collection of presenting random characters, many of whom only appear for one scene contributing nothing, and that's it. There's nothing that's keeping any of this in order, resulting the show to narratively be a complete mess. The biggest consequence for its lack of story is that it makes the show feel much longer than it actually is. Since it's mostly an opera, it's most notable with the songs where they feel like they drag on for so long just to prove only one point. I am a cat, I am a cat. I am a cat. I am a cat. I am a cat. Yes, I am a cat. 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 Speaking of the songs, they also contribute to another issue with the musical. Maybe some can appreciate them individually, but when putting them together for the show, it results in Cats to have a continuous tonal whiplash. They each have their own style and mood while being drastically different from one another, and as an opera that mostly jumps from one song to the next, it doesn't give audiences room to breathe after what they've just felt. You'll have one scene that is dark and somber about the unfortunate and sympathetic state of Grisabella and how all the other cats don't like her for it, and then immediately jump to, oh Lord, here come that chunky boy!
Who'd have ever supposed that that was Grisabella?
Christopher Jones is not skin and bone. In fact, he's remarkably fat.
What's even more frustrating is that even if it doesn't have a story at all, it sometimes teases that maybe a plot could unfold, but it never does. Like, there was one time when old Deuteronomy gets kidnapped by McCavity. Alright, so now it's time we see some action going on, right? Actually, no. Instead, we're gonna watch two sexy cats perform a burlesque show singing about how they hate McCavity and how he's evil. But then, how are they gonna get him back?
Magic.
No, seriously, they sing about this one cat that's a magician, and one of his tricks is magically bring back old Deuteronomy, and they continue like nothing happened. Okay.
I know that I am tearing this up into pieces like a dog, but it's just that my problem with how it doesn't have a story is that the show itself doesn't have a set purpose. Like, what is the point, or why should I care about anything that you're presenting to me when they all ultimately lead to nowhere, and all you're doing is just presenting me a whole bunch of random characters that just end up becoming irrelevant afterwards? Now, I understand that this is based on a series of poems, which is a bit explainable onto the show's format. Like, okay, that does make sense a little bit. But all this is not going to matter at all if you can't even answer the simple question of answering to me, what is the point of any of this? Like, what does it ultimately lead to? What's the connection with everything? There's just no answer. However, with that said, is there anything that at this point that I could say that's actually positive about Cats? Like, is there anything at all that I would say that I like? Well, honestly, that's going to be a little bit tricky, but after some thought, I guess I could say that the dances are pretty good, I guess.
If there is one way to describe this in a positive manner, it's that Cats is a choreographer's dream production. With a large open stage that the performers can take full advantage of and a wide variety of styles from the musical numbers, this is a show where the dances literally take center stage. And they don't just take any Broadway performers either. To be in a production of Cats, an actor has to physically be flexible to the point of also performing acrobatics and even ballet on stage. At the very least, while the show may not know what it's doing and is just throwing out all these random things without any form of order or consistency, the choreography is impressive. Same goes with the set design. The stage has a cool look as this junkyard where all the cats gather around filled with props of regular objects that have enlarged to sell on the illusion that the performers are actually the size of cats. But then you have the costumes and makeup, possibly the most well-known element from the musical. With the addition of how the actors also act as cats on the side, this is a make-or-break deal for viewers. Keep in mind that for about 2 hours, you'd have to sit there and watch people dress and act like a cat while they dance on stage. There's nothing else that the show will ask you to look at. Depending on who's watching it, it's either they will be completely amazed by the artistry put into the look and truly feel like they've entered in a new world where they're invited to be a part of the Jellicle ball, or they will be completely weirded out right from the very beginning that they have no choice but to watch literal crazy cat people.
Jellicles can and jellicles do. Jellicles can and jellicles do. Jellicles can and jellicles do. Jellicles can.
Yeah, I don't think this show's for me, so I'm just gonna be on my way. What kind of Neko cult is this?
Back on a lighter note, while I did slam on the songs earlier for feeling long, with how they can be vastly different from one another, it's the kind of soundtrack that audiences will walk away with at least one song that they will appreciate, and it doesn't have to be Memory. Even the harshest of critics will have that one song in the show that will get their mind off of the serious issues of Cats. Mine, for example, is the song with Gus, where he looks back at his old days when he was a prominent actor. Maybe this is just my actor side talking, but I felt like it was a very sweet moment that I can relate to when looking back at my old days when I used to hit the stage.
These modern productions are all very well, but there's nothing to equal from what I hear tell.
Then again, some could say that my perspective on the show is mainly because of the specific version that I went to watch, which in this case is the 1998 direct-to-video film. Now, it is true that sometimes when a film adaptation would be done that is based on a stage show, they would go and do a whole lot more than what the stage could allow them to do, like add some really neat tricks, some cool special effects, and make sets that are way bigger than what you can put onto the stage. Now, that certainly is the case with what they have done with Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat. But in this case with Cats, honestly, that's a whole different story, because honestly, thinking about what they could do on stage and what they presented in the movie, there ain't much of a difference.
According to my research, the differences between this and the live show are very minimal, making this a straightforward film version of the stage musical. Maybe they built a new set for this production, but the most significant change is that this film is actually shorter than the stage production to make it more TV friendly at just 2 hours. What it had to do to shorten the time is take away one of the songs and abridge some of the others. And considering the show's issues, that's actually kind of a blessing, because I feel like I might lose my mind if I sit and watch any more of these cat people pointlessly prancing around and introducing me to random folk for no reason. I have nothing against the 1998 version itself. Everyone who worked on it did their job and did it well. It's just the real problem is not how they executed it, but instead it's the fact that it's Cats. The musical itself is the problem. Yes, the set looks nice and it has some cool choreography, but the play itself is an absolute mess. It's not just the fact that it doesn't have a story, there's just no purpose that links everything together. And even if it seems like it has one with a Jellicle choice, the show treats it as a little side note to make more room for bringing out wacky and insignificant characters that each have a vastly different musical style that causes the whole show to have the tone go all over the place, surrounded by people in weird cat costumes. The best way to describe Cats is that it's confusing and pointless. As someone familiar with the works of Andrew Lloyd Webber, I highly recommend watching any of his other works instead. I mean, this is the guy who took the Phantom of the Opera and turned him into a Broadway legend. The fact that a show like this is in his portfolio seems entirely out of place. I know that people put effort onto the productions of it, but the core of it all is hopeless, and that's why I'm giving Cats a 4 out of 10. And yes, that's with the AniMat's seal of garbage. This has to be one of the worst cat videos I've ever seen.
So, as it turns out, I'm just not a Cats person. Guess it figures since I am allergic to cats anyways. Alright, but in all seriousness though, regardless of my thoughts, it doesn't change the fact that this musical definitely was a massive game changer that really made a significant cultural impact and has revolutionized Broadway. So even though the show itself doesn't necessarily have a purpose at all, it did have a significance in history by advancing the art of theater, by really bringing it into new heights. And honestly, in that regard, I don't think I can really hate it for that. But then again, this is the show that was responsible for bringing us this.
Here we go!
Listen, I only agreed to this review because this was requested through Patreon. There is no way that I am watching that on my own free will.
Toodle pip,